I'm so excited to have all of you on. I love these sorts of things. I love coming to talk with groups like this. And I think a really big reason why is because everybody coming in has so many different ideas and experiences that will contribute to the conversation today. So I can't wait to learn what you guys have to say about this as well. I think this will be a lot of fun. So building influence through trust is my topic. My name is Katie Werner. My pronouns are she, her, Senior Sales Excellence Manager at Invent, like Jay said. So I have 15 years of people capability development. So this goes back to the beginning when I was an instructional systems developer, and then worked at that for a few years, loved it, became the manager of the education center, and then moved to do some more kind of strategic capability and learning and development work beyond that. So I spent a lot of time in this space and absolutely love it. And honestly, I kind of got out of it for a little bit and was like, no, I need to come back. So I think I'm a lifer here. So there are 4 companies on the page that I've worked at. So I spent a lot of time in the industrial space. I have a husband and I have 2 boys that are 7 and 8. So absolutely full of energy and a lot of excitement every day as we live out in the country, and we love to dirt bike ride and garden and all of that. My superpower, I consider it to be empathy. And Jay, I know you have the same superpower. We've had many conversations about this. And I consider this to be one of the reasons why I love this conversation today. And I'm going to talk about empathy a few times in the conversation. And then I have a really strong passion for inclusion and diversity, which I know you hear in the way I frame up a session, even that I love all the different ideas of everybody coming to this meeting. So I'm really excited about the conversation. Let's dive in. Do you want to go to the next slide, please? What we're going to do is we're going to pull up a poll. And I want to hear from all of you about requesters and how we're interfacing them and what it's like to work with them, right? That's going to be a big conversation throughout the story today. So what we want to start with is this conversation as we're working with our requesters. I'm asking you guys, how often do we have impactful project-related ideas that aren't being heard? And when I think about being heard, I'm thinking about things like, hey, they appreciated the idea, they respected the idea, they implemented the idea. So I'll give a funny, yesterday I went to the eye doctor, and I had an idea for the woman who was doing the testing for me. She had this drink sitting on the counter, and I just a week ago heard a story about how this very drink gave somebody some major liver problems. And I don't have a lot of data around it. I probably shouldn't have said much, but I was like, hey, I just heard this story. And the lady completely dismissed me, right? But I was thinking, this could be really important for your health. This could be something that's absolutely essential. And you just dismissed my idea. And then I thought, oh, I completely forgot all the steps before that. I shouldn't have said anything. So we'll come back to that a little. I just thought it was a funny. So we're getting some feedback in the poll. I know I can see it. I'll give you 2 more seconds. Any last goes, then we'll close out the poll. And then Mark Cunningham is our lovely back-end assistant. And I think he will be able to share with everybody the poll results. So we can, thank you, Jordan. So we can close out the poll. Now everybody will be able to see the responses. So it seems like we're kind of, a lot of us are in that sometimes I'm being heard. I wish my ideas were heard a bit more. I'm in that category too, by the way. And I'm consistently working on, gosh, how do I listen better to be heard more? And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But what I love about this is, sometimes things are working for us, right? Do we ever stop and think about what do we do differently when our ideas are heard versus when they're not? So we'll reflect on that a little bit today too. So Mark, I think we can go to the next slide and close out the poll completely. Do I need to do that on my page? Yes. Okay. I needed to close it on mine. I'm learning. So I think it's important. I believe that normalization is a really important thing as we're working with people. I want everybody to understand here, this is a life lesson I've learned, that almost everyone struggles to get their ideas heard. And we saw that on the previous slide in the poll, right? And this is a very natural human thing. People trust their own thinking and their own ideas far more than they'll trust anybody else's. I imagine that in the chat, everybody's nodding, yes, you can give me a high five. You know, I think everybody's experienced this, right? Pretty much everybody likes their own ideas better than other people's. So almost everyone struggles to get their ideas heard. I do want to throw one other thing here because we're going to go into breakouts. And I just want to put into perspective a little bit that based on our own individual circumstances, we might struggle at different levels for no reason of our, no fault of our own, if you will, based on circumstances. We might come into a room and through bias or whatever the case might be, we might automatically be credited or discredited for our ideas. And so that just plays into the overall picture of how we are heard. And sometimes we, for example, me as a woman, I might need to work harder in an industrial space to be heard. I need to be more strategic about how I'm heard. So we can head to the next slide. What we're going to do is jump in quickly, give you guys a chance to do some thinking and talking in small groups. So we'll do breakouts in just a second. I want us to really think about these people. I know Jay said at the beginning, somebody who I trust and I would go to and I would get ideas from and I would trust what they have to say. So we're going to do a breakout and we're going to be thinking in our groups of who is that someone that you would trust, that you would, that they can challenge you, challenge your ideas, and you will really listen to them. Why? What is it about them? What have they done? What is it about them? So what are some of these kind of key characteristics? So what we want you to do is do this 10-minute breakout and come back as a team with 3 characteristics. So pick somebody who's going to be that person to type those 3 characteristics into the chat box for when we come back. 3 characteristics of why you trust that person. What is it about them? All right, Mark, anything else we need to share before we send off to breakouts?
Nope, we're ready. Take a screen cap of the slide, or I put a download of the slide in the chat that you can grab, and we'll see you back here shortly.
Thank you so much. We'll see you guys in a minute. So what were those 3 characteristics of the person who can challenge your ideas and you will actually listen? And I think all of us have this tendency not to want to listen. So who has broken through this barrier for you personally, and what is it about them? So we got one coming back. Thank you, Jesse. Awesome. Let's keep adding to the chat. Whoever in your team was designated to do that. And if we get doubles, it doesn't matter. That's okay too. So what were your 3 characteristics of the person who can challenge your ideas and you trust them enough to actually listen to what they had to say? So add in the chat, what are the ideas? I think we had 7 groups, so we should have at least 7 messages in the chat fairly shortly here. And then just take a look at what, thank you, I appreciate, we have 3 coming back, 4, good. We'll take a look at what people said as it's coming back here. And we should have everyone back by now, Mark, is that true?
Yep.
Oh, great. All right, so if anybody did not hear me, let's please make sure we're putting the characteristics in the chat. We have quite a few in here. I'm seeing experience and credibility, trust and relationship, having your best interest in mind, knowing you. Yeah, I love this, having your best interest in mind. You trust that they are wanting to collaborate and really care about you as a person, right? And if somebody wants to chime in and share like, hey, we had this golden nugget, I just want to say out loud, you're welcome to do that too. You can come off mute and share your thought anytime. Collaboration, trust, positive intent. So that aligns with that having your best interest in mind, right? That's a theme coming up. Good. Receive and give feedback, effective collaboration, use camera to catch the nonverbals when discussing. Interesting. Respectful diversity of thought, listening, caring about the individual. Okay, that's come up a number of times. Active listener, honest with useful feedback, empathetic, mutual relationships. Good. Okay, this is good. Have a lot of experience. Right. Okay, so I think naturally, go ahead, Jordan.
Katie, I'd add, we had a good example in our group. Jesse was
Good.
talking about how, like, if somebody comes over to his computer and starts to give a little feedback and they are from a different area of expertise, it's like, why would I take what you kind of have to say, go do your own thing? Because, we each have our niches, and if somebody's coming from a different one, and it could be hard. So I totally resonated with that example as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of what happened to me at the doctor yesterday, right? I think, yeah, when you don't have a frame of reference that says, hey, you've earned a place to share that. I absolutely, great point, Jordan. I appreciate that. Any other little nuggets somebody wants to share before we move forward? It's all right if not, just giving space if someone wants to. I'll share my individual. So Melissa Nelson Tate is a wonderful woman that I've networked with. We work closely together. And my three were: she listens to me, she cares personally about me, she's very humble, and she's very knowledgeable. And so she's really earned a lot of respect. Even in terms of chiming into things where maybe she's less knowledgeable, Jordan, to your point, and maybe I feel like I have more expertise, I still will listen to her because she's bypassed this kind of my own personal bias of my knowledge, right? So I love it. I think all of us are very in alignment. So I think as we think about this broader context of how it fits into this conversation today, the goal is to say, gosh, how can we be more of this person that we all just thought of when we are working with those who are requesting us to do work for them, we're delivering projects, whatever it might be? How can we be more of this person? And so some of the things we're going to talk about in the next slides will talk specifically about this. So next slide, please, Mark. As I think of Melissa and I think of some of these other people too, I try to put a character around what that person is like. I think calmly confident was one that came to mind for me. And if you have one you want to share in the chat too, please do as well. I think one thing that stood out for me is whoever it was not proving every step of the way that he or she had the knowledge and could kind of outwit me or outsmart me in knowing what's best and right for me, right? Even though they may have the best of intentions, still, if it feels like that, I'm very turned off by that personally. I think for me, first, really proving that we are somebody they want to trust, that they want to work with. That is so important, right? And down in the bottom here, we have these three characteristics that Frances Fry, if you guys have ever heard of her, she has an awesome TED Talk on this concept. And she's a professor at the Harvard Business School. She talks about this trust triangle. You need these three things. So you need logic, right, Jordan? You need this expertise of some sort to be able to contribute to the conversation, sure. But there's these other pieces that are really important and perhaps come first to allow the logic to even be important. And that's the authenticity and the empathy pieces that really feed into that puzzle. So what we'll do in the next slide is talk about what's kind of the order that these things can come up and for people to be able to open up naturally to that. So next slide, please, Mark. So this is my squiggly line of how kind of interaction with people might and can work, right? And I think we'll walk through each step, but we'll really focus on three particular steps in this squiggly line of working with people. So first is we can reveal empathy and expertise with our requesters, with these people we're working with, using a tool called the 30-second commercial. So early on, we can show them I'm not coming in here just to tell you what to do. And I'm not coming in here, I'm not going to butt heads with you. Here's how I'm going to work with you. So we'll talk about that. I'll give you an example in a slide. And one thing, just a side note on this, you heard at the beginning that I'm a sales excellence manager, right? This is actually selling. We are selling ideas. And I know some people, when they think of selling, they go, ah. And that's okay. This is real selling. This is really understanding people's challenges, building that trust, and having a problem-solving mentality about how you're selling. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Like, this is very scientifically based in a lot of research and stuff. So first step, reveal that empathy and expertise with your 30-second commercial. The second is practice empathy and authenticity. Really build that rapport with the person that we're talking to. This is where you're connecting on a personal level. You're really showing them that, hey, I'm interested in you. I want to hear what you have to say. I'd like to learn a little bit about you. Those sorts of things. I'm going to guess that over 50% of people on this particular call have developed training or have been a part of training that has been specific to this kind of concept, right? I'm not going to go deep into this. I think there's a lot out there on this particular piece. Where I think people get hung up is more the next part. So we see somebody gives us a request and we see right away, hey, there's a challenge, and we want to be able to tell them, this is what I think we should do about it. This next part is really important for opening the door to two-way understanding. So you deeper understand their challenges, and so that they understand that you understand their challenges. So the step two, or item two we'll go deep on, is learn deeply with empathy. Systematically discover their business challenges. And this strategically comes before we share our version of what we think should happen, which is this step 3 on here, right? Step 3 is where we tie their challenges to your recommended solution. This is where we can use our logic. This is where I went wrong for sure in my conversation yesterday at the office, at the eye doctor, because I gave logic right away, but I missed all these other things. So, and I knew I didn't have long enough, so I shouldn't have even done it, to my point. But this is where you get heard, is when you've done the work of going through these other steps. And the last one, I'm not going to spend any time on this because you guys know how to deliver the goods, show them the impact, and then celebrate what we've done, right? I think that part is fairly consistent across the board. All right, next slide, please. So this, I'm going to ask you again to be thinking about a chat answer that you can share in the chat as we go, or you can write it on paper and just share a nugget from it or whatever. But that first part where we talked about revealing empathy and expertise was your 30-second commercial. This is where you want to do 2 things. And I am not telling you, by the way, to script something out. That is absolutely not, because you need to be authentic. I'm just saying, let's think about the concepts of how we frame ourselves up to people. And then maybe you can do it a little differently next time, unless you're already awesome at this and you can share what you do that works. I'd love to hear that too. So sharing, what is my goal? My goal when I work with you is to, and this part should be very focused on their business challenges and really going deep with them to help them solve their problems, right? And we will achieve this by, what's the process you're going to use? As soon as you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to work collaboratively with you, a huge goal of mine is really to listen and deeply understand. How disarming is that? This is where I think a lot of people start to check in and say, oh, this is a little different. I like this. So I'm going to share my 30-second commercial. At the same time, I want you to be jotting notes about yours, and you can share in the chat here too. So I am going to read mine, even though I just told you we're not going to script it, right? So I'm a sales manager, the sales excellence manager, and my goal is to deeply understand the business challenges across our sales organization by working with you and your team to identify what is preventing us from achieving sustainable growth. We will choose focus areas, get ideas from the team, and then I will bring in my expertise from previous companies to help us determine the best path forward. So there's a lot of collaborative, we type of stuff in there, right? Another thing you might be thinking of as you're trying to write your own is, hey, I've already worked with these people. They're in my business. Like, we've already worked together 3 times. There is never a wrong moment to reintroduce the way you work and kind of shift. If you're trying something new, you can kind of reframe it up. So if you've done this before, you can say something like, before we start, I know we've worked together a lot, but maybe not quite in this capacity. So here's kind of how I want to do it this time. What do you think of that? So that can kind of reframe this up too. It's really got to be that kind of personalized approach to the situation that makes it successful. So I'm going to wait just a second. Maybe a sentence or something that's worked well for you, or maybe something that you really liked, something you wrote down, share a little bit in the chat if you could, please. I'll let it be quiet to give you guys a moment to think too. Thank you, Jordan. Jordan, have you used something like this when framing up with new requesters before, or people you work with?
I guess I've thought of it less as business challenges, and I've tried to I guess I've used in my brain, I've used the word problem. Can we get everyone on the same page about what the problem is, the same problem? So I think it's maybe similar, but maybe a little different. Do you have thoughts on whether business challenges versus problems, if one word is better?
So I have a personal preference on it, but I bet everybody's preference is going to be their own. I think when people hear "what's your problem," they take, like, if there's an emotional reaction to that, where what's your challenge with this? I think it's just because of like, hey, what's your problem? There's like an emotional kid-like reaction to that word. So that's why I choose not to use it. However, I think everybody can have their own approach to that. And probably tone is really important too. So you probably make it work for you. My 2 cents for whatever that's worth.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jay, good point. Ever changing based on the relationship. I think you're absolutely right. It's pretty circumstantial. Like, how am I going to frame that up and all of that? So I'm going to move forward. Hopefully you've had a chance. Thank you. Is that Timna? Did I say that right? Or you can correct me if that's wrong. Understand your name. Excellent. Yes.
Double muted. Timna.
Timna, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Awesome. I love this. Absolutely. And I'm sure you guys are doing quite a bit of this already, right? So this is, just stepping back to think about, do I want to tweak? Do I want to improve? Do I want to add a little bit more of a collaborative spin? I love where you guys are going with this. So good. Okay. We're going to go to the next slide, move forward a little bit.
Hey, Katie, I just want to add that what I really like about what you shared, and I know this is implied, but the idea, just in case anyone's not getting it, the focus on them is where you're starting. So if you focus on them as a starting point, that helps build trust. If you start with, hey, I'm going to do this, without the focus on them, it totally changes the communication, the trust, the conversation. And so all of this has to start with the other person, with the focus on the other person.
That's a really great point, Joe. Jay, I appreciate you bringing that up. That's absolutely exactly where I'm going with this. So, good, Mark. I'm glad you chimed in here as well. I love it. I love it. So we're going to go into a poll next. What we're going to do is kind of move through the squiggly line and get to the next part of the conversation. And this poll question will be, how often do you feel like your projects effectively solve an impactful business problem? And Mark, you can put the poll up. I'll put just a little bit more context around why am I asking this. I think a lot of us, if not all of us, have had someone come to us and we jointly with the requester make some assumptions together and we realize, whoops, we actually didn't hit the right thing because we didn't go deep enough together in what the real business challenge was. Maybe jumped too fast to the solution, didn't go quite to the root. I'll give you a little story here. So in my industrial space, I did a lot of technician training, and installation of our units was a really big topic. I got approached, probably 5 different people came to me and said, Katie, you have to get installation training out there. It's terrible. All of this installation quality is really poor. And after digging deeply with the requesters and really looking into the problem and asking a lot of questions, what I found out, actually, I even ran an event to help us really get to the root of this. What I found out is it has nothing to do with training. And I'm sure everybody's nodding their head like, yeah, I've had people ask me for things. Training wasn't the solution, right? It had nothing to do with training. It had everything to do with the fact that we didn't know what good looked like. We didn't have good standards in place for what is a good install. So it took us a year to get those standards in place. Then we came back and we did training. But if I'd have done that training and just moved forward without asking those good questions and getting deep into why, what's really happening, we would have solved the wrong problem. So what do we say? I think everybody's answered the poll. I'm not seeing it move anymore. So we can go ahead and publish it so everybody can see it. So how often do you feel like your project effectively solve an impactful business problem? Not often is pretty low. Often is pretty low, and sometimes is, again, the biggest one. And I think all of us, again, fall in this boat, especially because I think training is hard. There's so many different factors that make it successful. And if we don't really understand those factors or have somebody on the other side who's kind of implementing and helping us with the change management piece, that they don't understand those factors, it's not going to be very successful, right? It depends a lot. So really helping to kind of consult and make sure we're asking the right questions so that we can maximize the impact and really take it more from sometimes too often. That is the goal here, right? So let's go to the next slide. And by the way, if somebody has a question at any point, you're welcome to ask. We'll also do this at the end. You'll have a place to ask at the end. So here we're on that number 2 in the squiggly, and this is where we learn deeply with empathy. I'm seeing a comment from Jordan. My biggest frustration when business leaders seem excited and committed, and then months later, they haven't taken any action on their end, accidentally deprioritized because of fire drills or similar. Everybody's nodding their head on that. Everybody, I think, has this problem. Yeah, I know that's happened to me. It's happened to all of us. Best of intentions, right? We can't get rid of this. What we can do is minimize it, because you and I, we can ask the right questions to see where the red flags are. And we can say no if we see too many red flags, right? Or we can at least consult and try to help them see where this is going to be a challenge. And it might be understanding the bigger picture business of what's going on to say, how important really is this? If I'm a person receiving this training, what's it going to feel like to receive the training? And am I going to do something different as a result? Yeah, I love that. I'm really glad that you brought that up. So these types of questions that we have here are to help us unearth these business challenges. You may have better questions. You may have different questions. Let's share as we go through this, and we will we'll have a breakout in a session in a second where you will talk to each other about what are some of the great questions that you've asked that worked for you. Then we'll come back and we'll share some of those with the broader group too. So there'll be some really good back and forth because I think this is so important. So some of the questions we have on here: how does this project tie to the needs of the business? Why is it critical that we succeed? These are kind of, I'd say, fairly standard questions. What you learn in sales, though, is don't ever take the surface level answer. They're going to say something back here, and you want to go deeper. So if they say, I'm thinking on the fly, but if they say like, well, if we don't succeed, then we won't meet our revenue numbers. Well, why won't we meet our revenue numbers? Can you tell me more about that? Well, why is it so important that we meet our revenue numbers? What are some other factors that might be preventing us from meeting our revenue numbers? Really going where they went and going deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's a point where, they might say, oh my gosh, stop asking me all these questions. But I think most people would be really thankful that you are interested in that level of depth. So the second one is, why hasn't this been done yet? Why now? Do you have somebody who's coming in and they're ignoring business challenges that everybody else just realizes are there? Do you have somebody who really wants to make their mark on the organization? They're brand new in the role, but they don't understand the impact of what they're about to do. Those are the kind of negative sides of that, but there might be positive sides. Hey, we had this big change in how our buyers are buying, and now we need to adapt our selling training to meet this new digital age that we're in, whatever. So really getting a context for why, and that'll help you understand, is there enough of a why for people to want to change? Has this been tried before? What happened? So I was on a project where I thought it was brand new. I thought this was the first time we'd ever tried this. I found out they tried it 5 times before and failed. But I didn't find that out until like 3 months into the project. Okay, why did we fail? What were we up against? Why are we trying again? Like, are we knocking our head against the wall? So that I learned a lot through that, but I wish I would have asked that question right at the beginning. What might get in the way of our success? This is another one where you want to go deep and understand really the why, what's in our way. And you have to build some trust for this one to be a really good conversation, right? What will happen if we don't succeed? A lot of times, people have a personal investment in the success because they have made a promise to someone else, for example. Okay, if I have told my leaders this is going to succeed, and my name is now all over it, but all these other things are red flags, that's really good to know up front, because maybe you can help that person be successful in a slightly different way by kind of consulting, if you will. How do we know if we're successful? What will happen if we do succeed? I think these are more standard. We're probably asking some of these already. I won't go deep into that. I do a couple of kind of tips at the bottom. I think there are three things I want to share. One I didn't put on the slide. I thought about it this morning as I was on a call where I didn't see this happen. When somebody shares a business challenge, this is empathetic listening that we should always try to reflect back, at least a little bit later in the conversation, always try to reflect back. So here are the 3 biggest things I heard you say. Is this correct? What did I get wrong? And if we're always trying to reflect back, they'll say, wow, they've really heard me. Okay, now wherever they go with this, I'm going to trust more what they said. Another thing, this third-party story, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not. I think we see it or hear it quite a bit, but Third-party story is like, let me back up. Why do we need this? Is because people don't like to have their baby called ugly. They don't want to be the one that has a problem when nobody else has the problem either. And that's the real magic of this, is you're showing them, hey, you're not alone, right? This is something I've seen many times over, and here's what we should consider together. So a third-party story might sound something like, hey, on a previous project I worked on, it was kind of a similar request. We found out that people really just weren't ready for this sort of change. And then no matter what kind of training we did, it wasn't getting to the root of their problems, and it just wasn't working. Do you think that we might find any of that here? So it's asking a hard question like, well, how do you think this is going to fail? In a way that makes them see like, well, I did have that concern. I guess other people have that. Maybe we should talk through it. And it takes the harshness out of the question a little bit. This is the last one. I would say this is a pro tip because it is harder. It takes time and you may not be able to do it, which is, can you interview some of the individuals themselves early on in a project? And you can put it in the guise of, hey, I want to get some examples that will help me to build the training, to really understand and ask some of these questions a little bit in here too. Like, well, what do you think about this? Where do you think this is going? What do you think would prevent you from using it? You can just throw a couple of those kind of questions in there as well to see for yourself. So I'm sure you guys are having a lot of thoughts about this, or you might be getting a little brain tired. Either way, what we're going to do is go to the next slide, please. This is where we're going to go back and have another breakout. This is the time. So what are some questions at work for you to unearth those business challenges and build trust? You can think about ones you've asked, or you can think about ones you just heard and saw on the slide, or whatever, however you want to go about this. But what I want you guys to do is really talk about which questions do you feel like this is really helpful. And then I want you to come back, and as a team, again, you can pick one person to do this again. You can share 2 or 3 of those favorite questions with the group. We'll share them in the chat, and then everybody will get to see each other's. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this one. I'm super fascinated. So let's, Mark, if you want to break us back out, any other instructions we need for this?
Nope, just if you grab the download in the chat, that'll have the previous slide question examples as well.
Great,
right.
Thank you. All right, so we'll see you guys back in 10 minutes, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what you have to say. Well, wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing or seeing in the chat what you guys came up with. Yep, so it looks like get that closed out. Was this a fun topic to discuss in your breakouts? Somebody wants to share?
Yeah, I think it was nice. In my current role, I'm not working as much with like stakeholders and SMEs as I was in my previous role. So it was kind of nice, like remembering, oh yeah, like that used to be kind of a problem, and how would we address it with people that weren't maybe on the same page as us, or just trying to unearth the actual goal of the solution. So it was kind of nice just reminiscing on those old times.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that, Kelsey. And then you could bring back some of your own experiences to that. Yeah, that not on the same page as you, that is a really, that's a challenge, definitely. How are we doing on getting people back? We have quite a few. Hello, I see some videos. Yay. I love it when you come back and you still have your videos on. I get to see, see some of the people on the call. It's great.
We're all
good.
back.
Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm so glad that you're back with us. So you should have a list of a couple questions. You guys want to go ahead and throw those in the chat, whoever was your kind of leader to do that. And if we have multiples, then you can then you can put it in there. I mean, it's not a big problem. So go ahead and add to the chat. What were the questions that you guys came up with to help unearth the business challenges and build trust? Ooh, we got a lot from Leah. Is it Leah, or how do you pronounce your name, please?
It's Lee.
Lee, thank you for telling me that. I've seen your
No
name
problem.
before. I never heard it pronounced. I appreciate that.
No
Lee,
problem.
great. Tell me more about the questions you're receiving. Yes. Oh, I like that. About the questions you're receiving. Yeah. What's working well, struggles. I hope you guys are also reading these. I'm just kind of going through. Is this a change management problem or an L&D problem? Interesting. Do you? I'd be curious how often people tend to know the answer to that as a requester. Do they maybe need some help kind of sussing that out and figuring out which one it is? That's a great question. Who else can I talk to who might have a different perspective on this challenge? I love that. Yes. Paint me a picture of what success looks like for you. Absolutely. What's the goal? Who are your stakeholders? Important. You could change one thing. What is preventing people from taking this training? Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, a lot of these are good. Please don't take me wrong. That's great. Awesome. Oh, I love seeing these that are coming back. This is great. Yes, connecting with more people is so important. Anytime we can, we absolutely should. Anytime we can get in the door to do that. How can I connect with them? Absolutely. So know that they are the expert. Yeah. So oftentimes expertise comes in multiple forms, right, Cara? That we have experts in the content itself. But even though they're an expert in the content, they're not going to be the expert in how to communicate it and actually get people to change behavior. And, that's us, right? That's what we do in this space. And so kind of aligning that we're all experts in different things that are going to bring value to this equation. I love that. Performance gap. Yes. This is really good, you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Any burning comments you guys had after going through this? Anything somebody wants to share before we move forward? Yeah, that's exactly right, Cara. Yeah, I'm the adult learning expert, right? Good. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Interrupt me if you have something you want to share. And then we'll also have a little bit more time at the end for comments and questions from the group. So yes, next slide. Thank you. So here we're going to talk about that third part of the squiggly line that we were going to highlight today, which is tying their challenges to your recommended solution with logic. This is where we finally earned the position to say, well, here is what I recommend based on what I've learned. And when we do that, always recap what is it that we have learned. This is the reflecting back. How do we reflect back and share? Well, when I went through and you were telling me about this and we talked about these questions, here were the 3 themes that I kept hearing. And then when I heard those themes, here's how we then have crafted the recommendation to align with those themes that we believe will really solve the root of your problem and give you the results that you're after. So speak directly to their business challenges. Because I think a lot of times we kind of forget and we assume that because they told us something, they remember what they said. And because they told us something, that they will automatically link that something to what we decided the solution would be. So it's really important for us to say the thing that we saw or heard, and then to say specifically, what about our solution will solve that thing? And then we can describe how we've helped others solve that challenge in that same equation, right? So here's what I saw. Here's what I've seen work really well when others have had this situation. And so here is what I will recommend. Adds a little bit more credibility, perhaps, depending on how we come into the relationship and how much they already trust us. Show them how your solution will specifically impact them in this equation. So anytime you can, on the backside of that, you're sharing, well, Here's what I recommend, and here is what that will specifically do in your business. So if we talked about, I think that this will increase adoption because we're doing X, Y, Z. Here's why I think that. Maybe here are the human behaviors that typically we are working around, and here's how it will tap into that and help them have maximum success, whatever it is, right? But really showing them specifically how it will impact them. I expect an increase in 20% perhaps in your uptake rate because we do this specific thing. Whatever it is for your situation is very situation specific there. So point here, when they tell you the business challenge, that's gold. Use it, reflect it back as you're sharing with them your CRM, whatever it is that is going to solve their business challenges, as you're showing them the impact and really connecting all of that together. This is the wow factor, right? This is the one that says, wow, you really got it. You understood my business. And so I am going to trust you and listen to you through this process, right? Then it comes to the deliver and really, be excited because you've achieved something great together, right? I do want to share one other piece of this, which I think is really important. Next slide, please, Mark. I think a lot of us as learning and development individuals, we put a lot of pride in what we do, right? And we really want people to hear us, for us to succeed together and all of that. We have to go back to the original thing in my mind that we said, though, which is people will always trust their own ideas first over others. Some people are very protective of that. Some people have a lot of ego wrapped around that. Some people have a lot of their own self-worth wrapped around that. Some people will not hear you regardless of how much, how loud, how truthful, how loving, or how profound you speak. Wish them well and let them go. So we are not taking our own self-worth. If we're doing these things we talked about in this presentation, we're not letting their reaction or their situation reflect negatively upon us, right? So just sharing it again, right? Everybody has challenges with being heard. And some people just aren't ever going to hear us no matter what we do. And that's true no matter who we are and the situations that we face. So for me, it's kind of healing to remember this and to say, okay, it's not always going to be great, right? And that's okay. It's not a reflection on me and who I am. Okay, so let's go to the last slide. What I want to do here is have you guys think a little bit about all these things that we talked about today, right? The squiggly line as we're walking through first getting to know someone, doing that 30-second commercial, that kind of frame up of we're going to collaboratively work together, and your business problem, your business challenge is my number one priority. So you're starting there, you're building that rapport, then you're asking those great business questions, and you're not taking their surface level answer. You're going deep enough to really understand the surrounding challenges, the business environment, what's happening that might make you successful or not successful. And then you're using that information to present back, here's my recommendation. That's when you've earned your way to finally be able to do that. So as we think about that whole path that we've talked about today and all the great questions that you guys brought back and your upfront contract, like what is your key takeaway today? What was your aha moment or something that you say, gosh, I've done this before, but I really should do this more often, or something like that, right? And then two, if you have any other questions or comments, absolutely feel free to share. I think we have about 10 minutes left or so. So this is for you guys. Anything else you want to talk about? Otherwise, we'll see some key takeaways come back in the chat, or if somebody wants to verbally share your takeaway, you're absolutely welcome to do that too. So I'll be quiet for a second, chime in however you'd like as we finish out here. Yes, on the metric. Absolutely, Jordan. That's a really great point. Yes. Metrics are tough, right? Metrics are a really hard one to figure out what they should be and then effectively measure for training. It's a really good one though. We can do that. It's golden. 30-second commercial. Meet them where they are, reflect back what you're hearing. Interesting, Cara. Yeah, so you're doing an introduction, but you're going to beef it up a little bit based on thinking about what we talked about today. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. I'm glad to hear that there's some value to them in the relationship. Building trust is a high priority. Absolutely. Especially in the deep sea of new training requests. Gosh, isn't that so true? I love it. Carrie, is it Carrie Jones or Carrie would be? I love that you brought this up because busyness is the #1 empathy reducer, right? When we are busy, it is so hard to want to put ourselves in that shoes. Georgia, I see you are raising your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you for this. It's been really great. And I guess my biggest takeaway is, making it about them so that, because that's what they're concerned with. But an additional question I have is maybe we get to the root and we've got some trust, but there's still lack of respect or understanding for realistic timelines. Do you have a way to get around that? Because if they want a quality training, but they're like, okay, well, it's next Tuesday.
Yeah,
that's not much time.
Absolutely. That's a really tough one. I bet a lot of people on the call will have insight on this. My approach is typically more of a let's go through trade-offs and realistic scenarios. So I understand you want Tuesday. Here's what that means, right? I can deliver X, Y, and Z by Tuesday. There's always an answer if yes, right? There's always a version of yes I can share with you. But if I deliver by Tuesday, we realistically cannot do X, Y, Z that you asked for. If you'd like X, Y, Z because we aligned that is critical to your business, here is when that part will come. And maybe, Georgia, there's a creative 2-part solution that gives them part 1 of their answer here, and then part 2 comes out a little bit later. Maybe there's a way you can get creative about that. Jay, I see you come off mute. I'm sure you're dealing with this all the time. If there's something you want to chime in.
No, I was going to say, Georgia just got into sales. So Georgia, you should make sure to connect with Katie on LinkedIn was what I was really thinking. But no, my question was more related to what Jordan said, how do you say no? And then just kind of something that we didn't discuss. I almost put you on the spot with it, Katie, but I'm old enough in my experience, people don't always come to us with thought out implementation plans or business goals. Sometimes people come to you and they're asking for something. They're asking for a solution to a non-problem or something that they don't know is a problem. And, when I created the business initiative questionnaire, I was telling my group, God, that's like 15 years ago. The first question is, what is the business goal? And you would be surprised how many times I get a blank stare when I ask that question. And you really have to be, one, you have to be prepared for if someone doesn't have an answer. You got to be ready to say, oh, that's okay. People come to me all the time with something like this. Sometimes people just, they know there's an issue. They just aren't exactly sure what. You got to make them feel safe and comfortable. But the idea of saying no and the idea of, what do you do when someone's asking for a training solution to something that's not a training issue or not a learning issue? And
I think, Jay, I'm so glad that you brought this up, and Jordan as well. That was your question. I think that this is where the business challenge questions are so important, to your point, Jay, about your first challenge or your first question on your survey. So if you are asking them these questions and you're working on it together, most of the time, people will start to have those aha moments themselves, right? If you're really helping them see, and then using those kind of third-party stories to say, well, I have seen a situation like this before. Here's what happened. Here's kind of how everything moved forward. My experience now says, when I see this, don't do this again. What's your reaction to that? And if you can frame things up to make it their choice not to move forward, that's absolutely the best, because then you've done consulting that helps them also learn better skills about, oh, how do I look at business problems, right? So you're kind of coaching at the same time. I honestly have never outright said no. Like I said before, my approach is to, when somebody comes to me with a training problem that is not a training problem, I will help them to find the right next path for them. Who's the right person to talk to? What's the right next step for them? Or work through the business challenge conversation and we realize together it's not the right path. So that's my thought. If somebody else has a better answer for exactly how you would say no in that situation, absolutely chime in. That's my experience. I'm really glad you brought that up. I imagine lots of people are struggling with that one, right? Other comments, questions, reactions to that question from Jordan? I'm going back and reviewing some of your takeaways from the from this conversation. So the 30-second commercial seems like that was something that kind of hit home. I'm glad to hear that. I know for me, it's been very beneficial. I've really liked using that. I didn't learn about it until I was in the sales space. I was like, oh, this is a cool tool. So I'm really glad you guys are benefiting from that as well. All right, I think we're rounding out then. If there's any last comments or questions, please feel free. I'll stick on another few minutes here. Otherwise, I think we're good for the day. Mark, Jay, any last comments you want to share?
Yes, I'd like everyone to either use their hand clap icon or their thumbs up or chat or come off mute and say thank you to Katie for taking time today. And Katie, I did get the question from someone. I know we're recording the session, but I didn't ask if we can share your slides. I did get asked by a couple of people if you'll be willing to share your deck.
I believe that is not a problem. I'll go back through and take a look at it, but I think that would be okay. Absolutely. I'm glad that you feel like they are beneficial and you want to review them after the fact. That's great. Good.
So again, please say thank you to Katie, and it was great to see all of the interaction. I think people were very engaged, and again, just it's an important topic. I was joking to Mark that everyone who didn't attend must have this trust thing nailed. So I guess there's only a few people in the world who don't have trust figured out. So.
Absolutely. Jane, I really appreciate you hosting, and thank you very much for inviting me in. And everybody, this has been a highly interactive session. You guys have really shared a lot in the comments and the message in the breakout. I'm really pleased. Thank you for participating so much in this session. It makes them so fun for me and for, I think, everybody else. So wonderful. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you very much.